We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, including the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And we greet you on this, the first day of the month of Jumadi al-Ula, because the moon was not seen, not before last. So today was the last day of the month of Rabiul Thani, the lunar month. And tonight, the new month begins. So we greet you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, a greeting of peace on my behalf and on behalf of my distinguished brother, Ken O'Keefe. And we begin by recognizing the owners of this hall and the manager of the hall, Javed, who was so kind, very kind, in consideration of the fact that we're dealing with Gaza, we're dealing with Israel, we're dealing with the Holy Land tonight, that they did not charge us any rent for the hall tonight, and we pray that Allah might bless them for this gesture. We did ask you to pay a small registration fee, and that was to block those who would want to sabotage our program by registering and not coming. Now then, our topic, listen carefully, is an Islamic eschatological explanation of Israel's master plan. There is a macro part of the subject which I will deal with from the Quran, but there is a micro part that my brother Ken would deal with, because he is more familiar with what's happening on the ground than I do. And when I will take 40 minutes for my presentation, and I hope it will be adequate for me, and Ken will take 40 minutes for his presentation, and he should have more than that. And then after that, we'll have a question and answer session for a brief period of maybe half an hour, but it can be extended. So now then, Israel's master plan. And if we do not turn to absolute truth for an explanation, we might end up being confused and in a state of dismay. And absolute truth is in the Quran. Allah says so, that in this book there is al-haqqul yaqeen, absolute truth. And so let's turn to the Quran at the beginning of our talk. And when we do so, I want to begin with something with which most of you are familiar, but others are not. And this is a narration in the Quran of an event which occurred when a very arrogant ruler, who was stamping his feet with arrogance on a people who worship the one God, who was oppressing them, and who was about to seek to deliver what Netanyahu would describe as the final blow. And then Allah asked His servant to take a staff and strike the water. And because of a miraculous quality inside of that stuff, known as the minsa'a, the water parted. And the servants of Allah, the believers, were able to cross the Red Sea in safety. And when that arrogant ruler with his bloodthirsty army attempted to cross the sea, the waters came down. Prior to this, he was declaring, I am the Lord Most High, Ana Rabbukumul A'la. I'm hearing the same thing today in Gaza. Ana Rabbukumul A'la. I am the Lord Most God. Even the United States must listen to me. And then when he was drowning, Pharaoh realized he was not God. And then he said, underneath the water, no one knew about it. No one knows what happened underneath the water. Not even CNN and Al Jazeera. He said, I now believe in the God of the Israelite people. And then Allah Most High responded, and these are his words. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. When you're quoting from the Quran for the first time, you must always say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, seeking protection from Satan with Allah. Al-an, now Pharaoh, now you make this declaration, وَقَدْ عَصَيْتَ قَبْلُ, and before this you were in arrogant and obstinate rejection, وَكُنْتَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ, and you were spelling monstrous corruption and destruction on earth. Now Pharaoh, فَالْيَوْمَ, today Pharaoh, I have decided, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ, today I have determined that I am going to preserve your physical body. Why? لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً, that your physical body, when it is rediscovered, when it resurfaces in history, would function as a sign for a people to come after you. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا لَغَافِلُونَ, but most people are too busy to bother about my signs. This is Surah Yunus of the Quran. And so I ask myself that your body might function as a sign for a people to come after. What is that sign? What is that sign? The body of Pharaoh was discovered and positively identified. It was discovered in 1897, about the same time that the Zionist movement was established in Basel, in Switzerland. What could be the sign? Allah sent the Quran to people who think. But there are those who say no. Knowledge is a package. And that package is already sealed. And all that we need to do is to transfer that package from one generation to another, and all that you need is to memorize this kitab and that kitab and that kitab. But Allah says, I sent the Quran to people who think. And He says in the Quran, Inna sharra dawab Inna Allah. The worst people with Allah's sight, Summul Bukbul Ladina la yaqilun, are the deaf and the dumb who do not think. So we are in good company when we reject that bogus scholarship that says that knowledge is a box that is sealed. You don't have to think. And when we think and we offer a view, only Allah can confirm that we are interpreting correctly. So there is no need for any boxing gloves. So what could it be? لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً. That when your body is discovered, it would function as a sign for a people to come after you. And my answer, and Allah knows best, is that when the body of Pharaoh is discovered, history will repeat itself. That a people who will live the way Pharaoh lived, with arrogance, a people who will stamp their bloody feet upon a defenseless people who worship the one God, and slaughter them, treat them like cockroaches. That people who will follow the way of Pharaoh will die the way Pharaoh died. The last moment, when they're moving for the kill, and now the state of Israel will be rid of all its enemies, and Israel will be triumphant, and our version of truth will end with history. At that last moment, the same thing will happen which happened with Pharaoh, and they will be destroyed. And if this interpretation of the Quran is correct, then we still have plenty tears to shed. We still have much pain to suffer in the months and years ahead of us, before that time comes, when history will repeat itself, and the Holy Land will be rid of this bogus state of Israel, and true to time. That's my first reference to the Quran on the subject of the master plan. I want to turn to number 2 now. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, is a common father for the Jews and for the Christians and for the Muslims. All three of us, we all recognize Abraham as our father. And he goes to his son, but the Quran chooses not to identify the son. And there is wisdom in this, that Allah does not identify the name of the son. And he says to his son, Inni ara fil manami anni azbahu, that I have seen myself sacrificing you. A human sacrifice. Human sacrifice. And he says to his son, ماذا ترى? How do you respond? The son understood it to be literal. And he says, Ya abati fa'al ma tu'mar. Oh, my father, go ahead and do what you've been ordered to do. And when Abraham put his son's head on the block to sacrifice his son, then Allah Most High called out to him and said, you have already fulfilled my vision, my command. My command never required you to engage in human sacrifice. My command never required you to engage in human sacrifice. No! I wanted you to accept the sacrifice of the seed of this son. I wanted you to accept the sacrifice of the seed of this son. Which son is it? Ibrahim alayhi salam accepted it. And so while we weep, we shed tears, our hearts are weeping today. We have to remember that Allah asked him to accept it, and he accepted it, the sacrifice of the seed of this son. Which son is it? Someone changed the Torah. These are heavy words I use. And I don't use these words recklessly at all. Someone changed the Torah and wrote into the Torah that the son of the sacrifice was Isaac. But today we are not living through something else. Our prophet said, the best of those who came from Ismail alayhi salam, are the Kinana. And the best of those who came from the Kinana are the Quraysh, the tribe to which the Prophet belonged. And the best of the Quraysh are Banu Hashim, the clan to which the Prophet belonged. And the best of Banu Hashim is me. I am the best. And so our Prophet declared that the Arabs came from Ishmael. And the Israelite people, of course, believe that they have come from Isaac. And what we now witness is that the seed of Isaac, since the body of Pharaoh was discovered, the seed of Isaac has been oppressing the seed of Ishmael and demonizing them. The worst person on the face of the earth today, the most despised, is an Arab. And now they're moving in for the kill, and that's the genocide in Gaza. And we therefore say that what we are living through in Gaza at this time is the fulfillment of this vision of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it was the son of Ishmael who was to be sacrificed. We turn now to a third reference in the Quran. I am conscious of the fact that I'm offering an explanation of the Quran which is different from that which is popularly accepted. I'm conscious of that. The Quran, the Quran speaks about the Israelite people in in a chapter or a surah entitled the Israelite people, Banu Israel. And in this chapter or surah at the very beginning, Allah says that this was written, this was ordained. وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ. That Banu Israel will commit fasad. Fasad is something terrible. It is that which corrupts to the extent that it can destroy. Like cashless money, virtual money, paper money. Fasad is a criminal act for which Allah has ordained the worst punishment of all. Banish them. And if that is not enough, then cut off their hands and feet on opposite side and crucify them. This is in the Quran. But the two periods of fasad of the Israelite people took place before the Quran was sent down. The first time after the death of Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. I think Ken is probably familiar with some of the Arabic terms by now. After the death of Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, and they can engage in fasad, they corrupted the Torah. The Torah had prohibited money being lent on interest and borrowed on interest. And they rewrote the Torah to say that an Israelite is prohibited from lending money on interest to another Israelite. But he is permitted. He can lend money on interest to the rest of the world. Meaning, don't rip off your own brother, but you can rip off the rest because they're just like cockroaches. I know that my language is very, very strong tonight. And this is going to provoke a storm when this lecture gets on the internet. I know that. But the hour has arrived for the truth to be proclaimed, regardless of consequences. And so when they corrupted the Torah, Allah banished them from the Holy Land, because this was fasad. And they were taken to Babylon in slavery. So that was the first fasad. And then Allah allowed them to return to the Holy Land. But there's a Roman government in charge. And again they engage in fasad. One of which got Jesus, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, so angry with them that he turned over their tables and he chased them out of the temple or the masjid. And he said, you have taken the house of God and transformed it into a den of thieves like Lower Manhattan. And then again Allah expelled them from the Holy Land. And then, of course, this was after the attempt of crucifixion. So the two periods of fasad have already taken place before the Quran was revealed. But how come we are now living through a third fasad? Worse than the first and the second. Why does the Quran say two when there are three? That's the question. And I battled with this question for most of my scholarly life. But sometimes the truth is right in front of you, but you don't see it until Allah opens your eyes. And that's what happened to me. The reason why the Quran said twice, when in fact we're now living through the third, is that this time it is not Banu Israel who are in charge. The decision makers of the genocide in Gaza are not Banu Israel. Then who are they? The same people who control power in the modern Western world are the same people who control power in Israel today. And they don't have any genetic link at all with the Israelite people. Indeed, the Arabs have much closer genetic ties with the Israelite people than these European people who rule over Israel today. I think the ruler of Israel today, Netanyahu, came from Poland. So who are these European people who rule over Israel who are not Israelite? Yes, they say they are Jews, but they are not Israelite. The Quran tells us about Al-Masih al-Dajjal, and that's not our subject tonight. But the Quran tells us that when Allah destroyed the town and expelled the people from the town and placed a ban on them that they could never return to this ground to reclaim it as their own, until Gog and Magog are released. And then they spread out all over the world. And with their indestructible power, they take control of power in the world for one time. Only once in history will this happen. Let me repeat that this will happen only once in history. That the people who never walked on the stage of the world would suddenly take power, take control of power in the world, and there would be a ruthless, arrogant people who have PhDs in oppression and deception. They got a PhD in deception. And these people will spread out all over the world, including India. Ask Gandhi, ask Nehru, ask Jinnah, they will tell you. They will spread out all over the world. And then they will bring these people back to that town to reclaim it as their own. And the Quran does not identify the town. You have to think. And that's what I do. And they are angry with me because I think, and they shut the doors of the masjid on me because I think. And I say that the town is Jerusalem. And my argument is that our Prophet himself identified Jerusalem to be linked with Gog and Magog. Because our Prophet said that Allah will destroy Gog and Magog in Jerusalem. So who brought the Israelite people back to Jerusalem? Answer: it's modern Western civilization. That's right. And therefore those who control power in modern Western civilization, Agog and Magog. You may differ with me, no problem. But wait on Judgment Day and see who is correct. Wait. And those who control power in Israel today, Agog and Magog. If the Islamic resistance in Gaza knew this subject, then they would have responded differently. But they don't know this subject. And it appears to me they're not willing to learn. And so now we're able to understand that you do not have the power to be able to destroy Israel. No, because it's Gog and Magog. Iran cannot do it. Well then, what do you do when you're facing Gog and Magog? Answer, in Surah Al-Kahf. It is a policy of resistance to the oppression of Gog and Magog by building barriers between you and them, because Zulkarnain built a barrier. And because it is Karnain, and one Karn already occurred, there's another one coming. But that's another subject. So do not despair, because Allah is going to destroy Gog and Magog one day. And it's going to be biological warfare. They wage biological warfare with us with COVID. And the expression is, what comes around goes around. So you attacked us with biological warfare, and in the end, the Lord God will destroy you with biological warfare. So yes, the tears will fall, but don't let hope and faith leave the heart. Before I end, I want to turn briefly to Dajjal, the false Messiah. And you are familiar with the subject by now. You've read Jerusalem in the Quran that was written some 20-something years ago. And you know that Allah created him, and Allah programmed him to use computer language. And he is programmed to impersonate the true Messiah. The true Messiah, when he returns, he came and he left and he will return, will rule the world from Jerusalem, from a holy state of Israel. And he will have his ummah with him. And this is what Allah says in the Quran. So others who have a different view, don't listen to them, listen to Allah in the Quran. Allah says about a people who follow the Messiah, Jesus. He says, I'm going to raise them, the followers of Jesus. I don't follow Jesus. No. I follow Muhammad, Allah, this can be upon them both. But those who follow Jesus, I pray in the direction of the Kaaba. I know there are others who pray in the direction of Washington, but I pray in the direction of the Kaaba. And they pray in the direction of Jerusalem. So we're two different people. I fast in Ramadan, and my fast begins at dawn and ends at sunset, because night commences at sunset. But they have a different law of fasting. They fast from sunset to sunset. I am not allowed, at least in this life, to drink wine. But they can drink wine, they're not prohibited. So we are two different communities. And Allah says that I'm going to raise those who follow Jesus to a position of dominance over those who have rejected him. And who are those who have rejected him? Today, I'm using the word for the first time. They're called Jews or Yahud. That's the definition in the Quran. And today the Jews are in alliance with Zionist Christians. And they are the ones who are given to the world the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in French, l'OTAN. And that is one of the superpowers in the world, led by the United States of America, in what is known as Pax Americana. So Allah is going to raise a people who follow Jesus to a position of dominance over NATO, And when Allah raised this Christian people to that position of dominance, the Quran is saying that they will remain in that position of dominance until the end of the world. They can teach something else in political science in their universities, but this is absolute truth. So this is the Messiah who is to come. So if a false Messiah is to impersonate him, that false Messiah must also become the ruling state in the world. And that's why the British Army liberated Jerusalem, and then Britain allowed the baby to be born, the state of Israel. And the Western world remained so obsessively attached to Israel, feeding the baby, protecting the baby, arming the baby, until the baby grows into an adult. And the baby is now so strong that an Israeli prime minister could say, "We control the United States of America." Anybody else says that, the Marines will land in your country, but not Israel. And so now, we are moving to a stage of history that I have to turn one more time to the Quran to explain before I end. I'll have more to say later on, but this is the building the foundation for tonight, the master plan. In Surah Al-Mursalat of the Quran, Allah speaks of a shadow. What is the definition of a shadow? A shadow is something which is connected with a person or a thing. It is connected with a person or a thing. You can have a shadow of a stick, and you can have the shadow of a person. And Allah says, "Intaliku," proceed. Let history now proceed. "Intaliku ila zillin zi salasi shu'ab." Proceed to a shadow comprised of 3 parts. This is ayah mutashabiha. You have to interpret it. Whose shadow it is that is comprised of 3 parts. And Allah has sent this for a people who rejected His sign, rejected the Messiah. And we say the shadow is the shadow of Dajjal, and Allah knows best. And therefore, the Antichrist has a trademark. His footprints come in three parts. And we said it 20-something years ago, that in the first part of the shadow, the world experienced that horror called Pax Britannica. And in the second part of the shadow, the world experienced a greater horror called Pax Americana. Ken is very familiar with that. And now the third part of the shadow is appearing, and it is Pax Judaica. That Israel must flex its muscles. Israel cannot be the ruling state in the world when there are those who are hostile to Israel, living in the midst of Israel and around Israel. And so what explains the conduct of the Israeli government and the Israeli armed forces since last November is they're now attempting to clean up the area within Israel and around Israel. If you want to live in this land, you got to bow down and submit to us and live as our slave. Otherwise, we're going to destroy you and throw you in the desert and drop bombs on you until you learn to submit to us and be our slaves. As we were once the slaves of Pharaoh, you must now be our slaves. This is all I have to say. I've finished my 40 minutes, but I have more to say when we come back, inshallah, in the question and answer session. Ken, over to you.
I always learn when I listen to the series, so thank you very, very, very much. Today, first off, I'll start with the positive news from my perspective, and I don't really care if people know it or don't know it. I know it, and I'm so happy to know that it's coming, and sooner rather than later. Israel is done. They're over. They're cowards and they're running. They're dual nationals. And even their little sacred cow, known as the Jewish state of Israel, they don't have the courage as a proper Marine would or any other warrior. If this is your land, and it's the land that is yours and only yours, and you claim it, how could you possibly run away from it unless you were a coward? To leave the rest of your brethren to die, if this is your place. But they're all dual nationals, aren't they? Henry Ford referred to them as the international Jew, but he got a memo like, hey, cool that down, Henry, cool that down. Everybody who speaks the truth about this nefarious, parasitical, genocidal monster seems to have a problem. I know that. I know that well. In fact, the only reason why I'm here, which really is, all praise to God, for those that appreciate what I do, all praise to Allah. Only by the gifts of God could I possibly have the sort of qualities and abilities and strength and courage and fearlessness to do what I do. I answer to one master, that's it, nobody else. I love Jesus an awful lot. And I do recognize his mother as immaculately conceived virgin. I see very much what Islam sees about her, the most beautiful. And I also see the mother that I had, who gave me the strength and security to be able to test the boundaries. Israel has been running roughshod over this world, and as the Sheikh referred to it, the little baby of the West has been coddled and protected and armed. And now it is a monster, an adult monster. And we see it, the mask is off. For much of the world, the willful ignorance that people have chosen, it's pretty hard now to just repeat that tired old mantra, Israel has a right to defend itself. You've got to be a special kind of stupid to parrot that. But it's funny, isn't that the representatives that we have? Do they not represent us? Do we not pay our taxes to them if we live in this country, or America, or Canada, or the Netherlands, or Europe, or Australia? The little baby created by the West that is this Jewish state is in its dying days. As a warrior, I know arrogance is a weakness. The Sheikh also referred to arrogance. You've got to be a special kind of arrogant. Normally, when you're committing a genocide, and we have plenty periods, we don't hear much about the genocide in Algeria, about 10 million dead over there, courtesy of the Jewish-controlled France that instigated this. We look back at history, we see this pattern repeated over and over, which opens up an opportunity for me to show a book which I highly recommend, A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind, which brings us to the head of the snake, as I've been saying forever. Money. A lot of people will say that money is the root of all evil. That's not true. And that book will prove it right there. Money can be a servant, a tool to humanity. But when you combine money production, fake fiat money, usury-based money, fractional reserve money, compounding interest money, it's in this book, and it's there for all to see if you study history. That's why they don't want you to know history. Who controls the media? Who controls Hollywood? Who controls the politicians that supposedly represent us? And what does it say about us? If we pay our taxes and we vote, which one did you vote for? And if they did win, did they change anything? No, they didn't. They didn't. I'd like to take a poll. How many times do you think I have voted in my 55 years, in my entire life? That would be a big goose egg, 0. Why is that? Well, I think it really comes down to a book I need to write. I need to take a page out of the Sheikh's book. He's written many books. I've written 0 books as well. When did unacceptable become acceptable? Why did we ever accept a choice between the lesser of 2 evils? How did that work for anybody? Did you ever feel good about that? And now we see this dog and pony show called elections, which I've been calling selections for the longest time. Never mind electronic voting machines. But okay, so wait, we got Joseph Biden with a son that smokes crack and does business with the communist Chinese and built billions while also having intercourse with underage children. I could say it much more distinctly, but I'll just leave it at that. Joseph Biden also touches kids inappropriately. It's funny, because if you look at the pictures of Adolf Hitler, go look at the pictures. I've got gigabytes of pictures. Go look at the pictures where he is with children and tell me what you see. You don't see what you see with Joseph Biden when he's touching kids. He's sticking his mouth and his nose up into the ears of a child. You see a child moving away. You see a child telling us the truth. You see an arrogance that allows for someone to do that in the public eye, and then you see a willful ignorance that allows that to happen. And this is our commander-in-chief? When did unacceptable become acceptable? Oh, but wait, we've got a hero. Maybe it is the false messiah, a guy named Donald Trump. Why do I know that Donald Trump was best mates with Jeffrey Epstein? Why do I know that? Why doesn't everybody know that? And by the way, who's Jeffrey Epstein? He's a low-level player. He is a low-level player in the game. He's nobody. That's why they did sacrifice him. He's nobody. He's a little peon of the tribe. Who's behind him? How many people know the name behind Jeffrey Epstein? Why do I know that name? His name is Les Wexner. That's higher on the food chain right there. That's why most of us don't know his name. How long has this game been played with corrupt so-called representatives in our so-called democracies, how long have they been having inappropriate relations? I could use stronger words, rape would be a good word, with our children. I know a lovely lady, Miss Polton, she made a documentary called Pedophiles in Parliament. It is staring us in the face. Staring us in the face. So we've got Donald Trump. Remember now, I'll quote Joseph Biden, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And who is this man? Oh, General Schofield, Cyrus Schofield, who's that? Who is this man? How in the hell did any self-respecting Christian allow for a perversion of Christianity to pose as Christianity and to ally itself with a monster state known as the Jewish state, which will not only prosecute you, spit on you, kill you, defile you, and says that your Savior is boiling in hot excrement in hell in their holy book? How is it possible? How is it possible? Did God give us a brain? I remember the Sheikh talking about this. He didn't say as much about it tonight, but if God gave us a brain, and we, for whatever reason, and we can make a whole lot of excuses, myself, let me just go ahead and say right now, I've been as stupid as anybody. I joined the Marine Corps. I was ready to kill or be killed. I was a mercenary for the banksters. I was an idiot, is what I was. Humility is a big deal. It's very important. I think all of us are going to have to admit to one degree or another we have been duped. Unless there's somebody out there who got it from day one, please raise your hand if you did. Thank you for all at least being humble and honest there. We all were a bit stupid, it's just depending on to what degree. Unacceptable is unacceptable, period. And the lesser of two evils is something we never should have tolerated. Paying taxes for genocide, how do you think God is going to look at that when we go up to meet our Maker? How do you think that's going to go? When we say, but I didn't know. What do you think God is going to say to that? Somehow I don't think ignorance is going to play defense when you meet your Maker, and I know it ain't even in man-made courts of law. If you go in and say, I didn't know that was a crime, that is not a defense. We have got hell to pay, and I tell you what, we need to atone, all of us, myself included. We are paying for genocide. Now, the short version of the story, which I think everybody here probably knows at this point, what's happening in Gaza, I have family in Gaza. I'm in touch with them. I've just managed to send another $500 or something. I was actually, with help, sending money to them before October 7th, 2023, to try and help them. I didn't have as much money as I wanted because the family that I know, who I met 16 years ago, who look at me as a father figure, one of them, a really amazing young man. He's a young man now, he was a boy back then. But he asked me a little over a year ago if I could send him enough money for him to be able to buy a good quality camera so that he could be a journalist. I didn't have the money, I've been mostly poor. I've been mostly impoverished, lost everything I own 3 times in 10 years, been in prison, tortured, you name it, blah, 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 blah. That's the price you pay. I sleep good at night. I don't fear God, I love Him. He is my master. I listen to Him, I love Him, I pray to Him daily. I couldn't send the money, but maybe that was God's way of saying no. Because if I did send him that camera, and he was able to be a journalist, given what we know about what happens to journalists in Gaza, probably he'd be dead. Instead, he's just starving with no shelter, and he's freezing cold, and his family is cold because they don't have the cold weather clothes. There is nowhere safe in Gaza. He was also witness to the burning bodies. That's actually the biggest post I've had on X. The burning bodies. You know, the young man with an IV in his arm, on a cot in a field hospital, since all the hospitals have been destroyed, burning alive. It was his mother who you see leaning forward as she's burning alive. He was actually there. They were there in that area. He saw that. The traumas that he's seen. His mother, Zainab, she's still alive. I met her, did a video where I interviewed her about the hell she had been through back then, 16 years ago. the amount of traumas that these people have been through, most people would just absolutely crumble, absolutely crumble. The Palestinians represent the absolute best of humanity, and most of humanity has turned a blind eye and abandoned them, including the shameful Arabs and Muslims, so-called, who did nothing. Nothing. Shame on you. Not you. The ones who've done that. But we all have that. Even now, why is the shame not embraced and loved? Is it not possible to disagree a bit? But instead, all these mosques out here that don't welcome this man, what does that say about the state of Islam in this country? What does that say? Shame on all them too. We do have a great opportunity, and I'm all about solutions. The atrocities we see in Gaza, and also the good men. I met Ismail Haniyeh several times. He awarded me both Palestinian citizenship, which I'll get back to that in a bit, and also the key to the city of Gaza. And funny enough, Donald Trump awarded Netanyahu the key to the White House. If I could trade my key to the city of Gaza for the key to the White House, what do you think I would? No, I wouldn't choose that. But it says a lot about my bird nation, that you give a patent war criminal. You've invited him to the US Congress 4 times. I'm sorry, who is in charge here? How is it possible that this little Jewish state, so-called, basically gives the talking points to all of our so-called representatives? And have we done enough by going to protests and signing petitions? Is that enough? Are we going to meet God and we're going to say, yes, you did your part? No, we didn't. No, we did not. At best, we did the bare minimum. But on the positive side, I just had a meeting yesterday with a group that is part of a movement which I will be representing, inshallah. It's called Make War History. I want to explain this because here's a solution. And soon I'm going to be able to present this, God willing, that will allow me to be able to shame everybody who does not participate in this. And I mean that. Make war history. Let me tell a little bit about law, actual law, as opposed to the color of law, which everybody seems to think is actual law. Acts of Parliament are not law. The law of this land, which actually is something the British people could be proud of, goes back to Magna Carta, to common law, to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution that most British people have no clue about. Guess why this amazing contribution to humanity before the tribe, the usurers, got their grubby little mitts on this country? Guess why Magna Carta was brought into existence, primarily, of all the good things it could say? Now, I recognize God's law as the highest law, but I recognize man-made law that is consistent with God's law to be a positive thing. Magna Carta was brought in because it was known, it was understood before they dumbed us down, that usury was unacceptable. I get back to that. When did unacceptable become acceptable? At what point did Muslims accept something that is completely unacceptable with regard to Islam? At what point? When did that happen? How many of these mosques and imams are talking about that? How many of them are getting their dirty little usury money given to them so they can keep their mouths shut? Cut this man out and play their little game so they can have the favor of the investors who allow them to live their false Islam lie. I say that as a non-Muslim, although I am in service to God, and so in that sense, I am a Muslim, and I'm a Christian. Is it possible to be both? Maybe there is a middle ground here. Maybe we can agree to disagree on some of the key points and acknowledge that there is only one God. I do not pray to Jesus, nor do I seek Jesus' forgiveness. I recognize him as something probably above what maybe a Muslim may, and this is where we could disagree perhaps, but it was Jesus who brought me to Palestine. He's the one. Something pulled me there. It was him. And when I went there, I indeed lived what he said, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I'm a free man because I know the truth, and I know the truth is God, and God is truth. There is no difference between those two. It's Satan, Dajjal, Lucifer, who operates in the realm of lies and illusions. The idea that materialism is going to buy you happiness. There's a great way to illustrate this point by looking at, if you go online or if you study, you can find atheists, famous atheists. Voltaire is one of them. Anton LaVey, the creator of the Church of Satan. You know what happened to them in their dying moments? Do you know what they said? It became clear that their rejection of God comes with a price, and that your coveting of the material pales in comparison to the value of the spirit, the eternal soul within. This is something that I was never so foolish enough to confuse the corruption of the Catholic Church, to which I am officially. My grandmother, born and raised in Ireland, made sure that I had my first Holy Communion and Catechism. The Catholic Church has not always been what it is today. It used to be something noble, but they infiltrated that too. That's what they do. They infiltrate and subvert from within, like maybe the mosques that are here in this country, turning a blind eye to the things that are the tenets of Islam, such as usury. Same thing with Christianity. How did any of us who call ourselves Christians accept the unacceptable of usury? How did we fail to learn the lesson of Jesus, who not only upturned the tables and splashed their dirty money all over the place, but took out a whip and whipped them? That's not turning the other cheek. He didn't turn the other cheek there. That's a warrior right there. That's part of why I love Jesus. He wasn't no hippie. Make war history. Let me tell you something that we're going to be able to do, that we can do now, which we could have done sooner if we were really serious. I'm blessed to work with these people who are doing this. I want the Muslim community to get behind this 1,000%. Or shame on those of you who don't, because this is going to come. This is going to come. God willing, this is coming, and it's coming this year. And I think maybe this genocide was the clarion call, like enough is enough. It should have been enough a long time ago. Here's the basic crux of the plan, which is an application of law. According to law, our representatives, whether you voted, didn't vote, whether you voted for the one that won, lost, whatever, indisputably, undeniably, and raise your hand if you don't agree with this, these people officially represent you in terms of law. Does anybody disagree with that? Thank you. Okay, step one, they represent us. They are bound by the treaties of which this nation has signed on to. Among those treaties are treaties against torture, genocide, the enslavement or employment of children to the point of slavery. There are a number of treaties, the Geneva Conventions, the rules of war. You can't kill civilians, you can't kill children, you can't attack power plants, water treatment facilities. All of these things, our government, our representatives, they have signed treaties, which are contracts between nations, and therefore, when we pay our taxes, and those taxes are used to commit genocide, to provide arms to the genocider who's openly declared it, to provide the facilitation economically, trade-wise, politically, for rape and torture to the point that we see riots in Israel, not against the red-hot metal rods being inserted inside the rectum of prisoners to the point of paralyzation or death. They're rioting to defend their right to do that. Literally. How many of you have seen that? Yeah. If the lying media wasn't lying media, every single one of you would have seen it. It's happening. And if you meet God in fail to recognize it, he'll tell you. So, these treaties of which our representatives are taking our taxes, you go outside right now, you buy something, you have just funded genocide. Is there anybody in this audience who will deny the fact that when you pay any tax at all, that you are paying in part for genocide, torture, mutilation, the killing of children in Gaza? Is there anyone in this room who wants to deny that when we pay any taxes here in this country, that some of that is going to kill the very people we claim to be defending? Thank you again for your honesty. So, what do we do with that? Here's what we do. We make war history, and here's how we do it. We have a positive obligation. We don't have a right to not pay taxes. We have a duty to not pay taxes. Because if we pay into a tax system, which at this point, indisputably, undeniably, funds, facilitates, and equates to genocide, torture, murder of children, everything else, what does that make us? We become material support, financiers for all of said crimes. So, make war history. Here's what we're gonna do. We are going to take all those taxes. Are you happy with your taxes? Would you like to reduce your tax burden just a bit? Here's a selling point. Now we're talking, eh? Let's reduce the tax burden. You happy with the way the council's treating you? Do you like the council? They're doing you well? You happy with your income tax? How many taxes are we paying? 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 50? I don't even know at this point. How much of your income is going to facilitate this? How many of you would like to reduce it? Here's how we're going to do it. What we're going to do, and this has already been done, by the way, on a smaller scale, but I intend to make this massive, and not just in this country, for my birth nation and the entirety of the Western world. In fact, the whole world. We're going to hold our leaders to account. We don't have a dictatorship here. We can't hide behind a dictator doing things against our will. These people represent us. Now, instead of paying taxes to the government as you're told, what we're going to do is we're going to put those taxes into a trust. A trust. That trust will hold all of our taxes, so all of the money that they're getting to commit these crimes is no longer going to go to them. It's going to go into the trust. And you know what we're going to do then? This is an application of God's law right here, and it also happens to be man-made law. We're going to serve notice. We're going to serve notice to our representatives, and we're going to make clear, okay, we, as citizens, subjects of this land, have a positive duty. We recognize the duty. We are concerned about our potential failure to meet the requirements as citizens, subjects of this land, and we are in danger. In fact, we believe that we have become the material facilitators of these crimes. Therefore, the money that we were paying you and potentially facilitating all of these massive crimes is going into this trust. We need now from you, here's your notice, to assure that there will be, one, no more trade with Israel. I'm not even talking about just weapons. No political support, no more Keir Starmer getting up and saying that Israel has a right to cut off water, food, electricity. That's the man in charge right now, by the way. He said that. You now have been served. If you cannot reply and assure that these funds will not be used to pay for any of these crimes, those funds will then be returned to the people until we can have a government that represents the will and the duty of the people. And we're going to end war. We're going to end all war except for war of defense. If someone's coming in to invade, then you defend. No more of these aggressive wars, which, by the way, the Nuremberg Tribunal said was the supreme crime. This is a solution that I wish we had enacted a long time ago. And I can honestly say that I was involved with people that were working for this over a decade ago. I have many objectives in my life. My ultimate objective, my ultimate mission, is to hand this world over to our children in a way that we can genuinely feel good about. And I think based on what I've seen from the previous answers. I don't care how much money your kids got. I don't care how many properties you own. If you're feeling good about handing this over to your children, something is wrong with you. And if it ain't your children, is it okay what we're handing over to the Palestinians? They don't even have a childhood. They're deprived of their childhood. They literally don't even have a childhood. I say we end this. I say we end it now, this year. And while the dam is breaking on so many different subjects, this is an option that we have before us, and I will do everything in my power, including a willingness to lose everything to make this happen. But I can't do it. I can tell you what though, we can. We can, and we must. So, I don't even know how much time I took. The Sheikh, God bless him, has left the stage, and I hope he's okay. There are other solutions as well, getting out of the funny money usury system. There's other ways to produce money without usury. If you read that book, you'll understand that. And if you look at the history, funny enough, I know my mate over there, he knows the answer to this question. How many hours a week is the average person working here? 40? Many of you are working more than 40, I'll bet. Yeah? Do you know what the average work week was when we didn't have usury and we did not allow the tribe and their usury dirty money system to come in here? You know what the average work week was? 14 hours. 14 hours. And that wasn't just getting by, that was 14 hours, fair wages, living a good life. Do you know what the people did when they had 14-hour work weeks? Well, one, you can probably imagine you spent time with your family, didn't you? But you also had even more time. There's 24 hours in a day, man. 14 hours, a lot of people work 14 hours in a day. I know I have, as a businessman, so. All of these magnificent buildings that we see, the Parliament and these cathedrals and all of these things that were built, they were built by the tradesmen, even stained glass windows. We used to have artisans who knew how to make these things. A lot of that has been lost now. We could revive that. We could have a culture and a civilization that would be truly magnificent. We could rise to the levels of what God enabled us, our capacity. We could have that. We could hand that to our children. I like that idea myself. I like that a lot. Make no mistake, it's up to us. This is the one thing that I will say in parting on this note. As much as I see prophecy, and I've even been able to prophesy some things, if you see it accurately, then you can predict quite a bit. I'm not Jesus, I'm not Muhammad, God bless him, I'm just Ken O'Keefe. But I prophesize this, Israel's done. And as I've been trying to warn humanity, I don't know if the Samson option is going to happen or not, but I have a feeling if we get right with God, even if Israel launches all of its nukes and carries out its Samson option, terroristic threat against the world, I have a feeling God is just going to take all of their little nukes and just turn them into little inert pieces of metal that are going to come back to the ground. And maybe he'll rain down fire and brimstone like he did on Sodom and Gomorrah and Babylon. So I think most of you here, if not all of you to some degree, you're getting right with God. Keep going with your prayers. Keep listening to God. Keep serving him and know that he does not want usury. He does not want our children enslaved. He wants you to do everything that you're capable with, that he endowed you with. We have it within our means. Let's make it so. Let's make it so. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you.
يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي وإلى موائد جود مولاك ارعي يا نفس إن
prophecy maybe 25 years ago. I said that this must not be understood literally. There is no mountain of the metals coming out of the river. But this has to be interpreted. It is an ayah or hadith that is mutashabiha. You have to interpret it to be able to understand. And I said that when Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia after the war of 1973, in which the price of oil rose by 400%, from $3 a barrel to $12. And the price of gold increased. In fact, it was the value of the US dollar which was decreasing from $40 for 1 ounce of gold to $160 for 1 ounce of gold. Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and he convinced King Faisal, rahimahullah, that there was much more wealth for the Arabs if they will only do one thing, that they must sell their oil for nothing else but US dollars, which was sinful, bogus. It was meant to preserve the US dollar, keep it flying high. And Saudi Arabia agreed, and that was when the petrodollar was born. And that meant that an ocean of oil underneath the river now began to function as a mountain of gold, the petrodollar monetary system. I said this 25 years ago, but no prominent scholar of Islam anywhere in the world ever agreed with me, but that's not new. And so now, from that petrodollar monetary system, which has the International Monetary Fund backing it, has emerged a monetary system which has ensured the dominance of the modern West. But when BRICS was born, BRICS emerged as a challenge, a feeble challenge at that time. Namely, Russia and China joined together to seek an alternative, another monetary system, and Russia and China succeeded in bringing India and South Africa and Brazil on board, and that's why it is called BRICS. And now that alternative has grown so significantly that it is now threatening the petrodollar monetary system. And therefore, I agree with the view that this is one of the major causes of the walk towards nuclear war. Next question. What is the link between Imam al-Mahdi and Gog and Magog? And when will the Imam al-Mahdi say takbir 3 times? I am not aware of this part of the subject. The link between the Imam al-Mahdi and Gog and Magog. The answer is that Imam al-Mahdi is a descendant of Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him, who will be sent by Allah Most High into the world to restore the valid model of a state with Allah. That valid model of a state was called Holy Israel, and it was established by the Prophet David, Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, and then with his son Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. That model of a state became the ruling state in the world. That model of a state was replicated when Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him, established the holy state in Medina, the Islamic state. And then when that model of a state disappeared from the world and was now replaced by a secular, godless model of a state with which we now live around the world. When Akhir Zaman comes, that model of a state must be restored. Why? Because Jesus, the Messiah, is coming back. And Allah taught him the Quran. So when he comes back, he's coming back not only to his followers, but also to the followers of Nabi Muhammad. Allah's blessing be upon him. So when he arrives here, it would be a pathetic spectacle if we still live with the Republic of Egypt and the monarchy of Morocco and the Republic of Algeria and the King of Malaysia and Indonesia and all the rest. The model of a state with Allah, that model, must be restored before the Messiah returns. And that is the function of Imam al-Mahdi. To restore the valid model of a state, so goodbye to Kuwait. I was giving this lecture in Manhattan in the 1990s in a big masjid. And I was not aware that the Kuwaiti ambassador was sitting right in front of me. And I said, when the Imam comes and the Khilafah state is restored, goodbye to Kuwait. The ambassador was not happy with that. Because the Khilafah state, or the holy state, would now be restored. This is the primary function of Imam al-Mahdi. Gog and Magog have a different function. The primary function of Gog and Magog is to bring the Israelite people back to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, to reclaim it as their own. And so Gog and Magog first took control of modern Western civilization, controlling power in the West. They still control power in the West. And Gog and Magog then spread out all over the world and took control of power in the world. And then Gog and Magog brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own. And they have now accomplish that mission. And Gog and Magog will be destroyed by Allah when Nabi Isa, Jesus, returns. So between the Imam and Gog and Magog, the only link that there is that the Imam will be able to restore. He'll be able to liberate the Arabian Peninsula, and Gog and Magog will not be able to prevent it. And the Imam will say, get rid of Saudi Arabia and restore a Khilafah state with the capital in Mecca, and Gog and Magog will not be able to stop that. Once that Khilafah state is restored, that's the beginning of the end of Israel. Good. Yes, time for me to have some correct chai? Yes, you want to go. And for Ken to answer some questions. Thank you, Ken. Any questions for Ken? Yeah. Give it in.
So the question is, are you aware of the work of Chris Coverdale in the UK? Something, no tag for gender. He has something called Probity Co. I'm not aware of this one, but it is related to Probity Co. and then Make War History. So I do know Chris. I was with Chris just the other day. So who is the author of the book you mentioned, A History of Central Banking? So yeah, you don't have the picture. It's Stephen Mitford Goodson. So yeah, if you don't have that down, then you might want to write it down. Stephen Mitford Goodson. I'm very familiar with Chris. I've known Chris a similar amount of time to when I met the Sheikh, because we met a decade ago in Iran. And I think I've known Chris maybe just slightly longer, and we immediately hit it off. Same as with the Sheikh, we have very common interests. Chris Coverdale, I call him the quintessential Englishman. he's like just the old school quintessential Englishman. Such a beautiful guy, repository of knowledge as well, and really exemplifies the best qualities of England. And I'll be meeting with him again, inshallah, next week to further the agenda of Make War History. And there's also another core group within this that are equally beautiful people in their own right. And I did say this, as the question is asked about Chris, it's an obvious opportunity for me to say that of the many of you who voiced an interest in participating or contributing in some way, I can assure you that we can expedite this process. Although we already have the core foundational stuff, it's really just translating that into the working website, like the logo. You know, I want to see Make War History, NWH, all over. Like the same thing as my hat is sort of my signature, you know. I want to see Make War History for real, not like a slogan. I remember actually imparting on this 20 years ago when I did the Human Shield Action to Iraq, 21 years ago. I actually was wearing, I gave a speech at Camden Town Hall, and somebody had given me a nod in my name. And the only reason why I felt like I could wear that was because while everybody was wearing none of my name, they were going to protest. I was going to Iraq to be human shield and ready to die. And I said on the Hard Talk interview, you know, when I was asked by an adversarial, more of an interrogator than an interview, do you think it will matter? And I said, yes, I do. I think it will matter that someone from the West shows so much that they care, that they're willing to be down there. And if we're going to die, then let us die together then. Anyway, not in my name, I felt I could say that, but I don't think we can say not in our name until we make war history and we do what I talked about earlier. So those of you that have abilities and would like to contribute, this is completely in accord with Islam anyway, as if God doesn't want us to end war and stop being pawns in a game of self-destruction tempting World War III.
Okay. Does day like a week, will it commence before or after nuclear war? What a difficult question. The passage from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana is the template to be used for us to recognize the passage from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. When I examine that template, I find that among the things that are significant in it is the transition from one form of money to another form of money. That with Pax Britannica, the world was given the British pound as His Majesty the British pound. And then at Bretton Woods in 1944, this is upstate New York, we saw the British pound giving way to the US dollar in the Bretton Woods Agreement. And then emerged the International Monetary Fund, which established the US dollar as the international currency. And so I conclude, I did it 25 years ago, that we will recognize the emergence of Pax Judaica when the US dollar is receding into the sunset and something is emerging to replace it. And that is now right now at our doorstep. It's called cashless digital money. And so I perceive that we are now in transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. But the template has other things as well. And that is that the passage from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana required 2 world wars, which are in fact won in 2 parts. And so I have come to the conclusion that the passage from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica will not be completed until the Great War takes place. And that Great War, which we call Al-Malhama, and they call Armageddon, that Great War is just around the corner. That is the best answer I can give. How come no questions for him? Despite Iran's central bank not falling to the Zionists, why is it so weak? Why is it so susceptible to sanctions? Why haven't they given to the world an Islamic example of an economy? I met in Iran with several ayatollahs, and I seldom found amongst the ayatollahs any understanding of the monetary system. I didn't find any difference between Shia and Sunni. They're both at sea. But I did find in Qom Ayatollah Shirazi, who has now passed away, a very old man, a very gentle person, and a very lovely person. And we sat down in his home on the carpet, and he taught me a lovely lesson about riba. I will never forget it. But he was the only Ayatollah I met who showed an understanding of the monetary system. I met with Ayatollah Binazadeh in Shiraz, and Ayatollah Binazadeh said to me about the monetary system, the Riyal and the Doman. He said this is the root of all evil in Iran. Apart from these two Ayatollahs, the rest were at sea. What they said to me, and not only the Ayatollahs but others, they said to me, Sheikh Imran, what we need from you is you must go to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's called the supreme leader of the Rahbar. And you must explain to him the monetary system, and explain to him and convince him that it is haram. And once he recognizes it is haram, and he gives one order, all of Iran will obey. And I said, I will never do that. I will never do that. You are the ones who must study the subject. And you are the ones, your Ayatollahs, who are the most learned of all. You are the ones who must be able to make the change. I will come to your country and I will teach, but I am not going to the head of the state to try to convince him. And that's where they are. You will not find in Iran any significant voice in the whole country arguing that the monetary system based on paper money is bogus, is fraudulent, it's haram, and that Iran should return to dinar and dirham as money. That's the pathetic state of Iran to this day. If you can.
Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov recently said Hitler had Jewish roots. What do you think of this claim? Well, it saddens me because I know that the Sheikh has met the Russian Foreign Minister, and from all accounts he's an intelligent man. Where the hell he came up with that? It sounds like a Jewish instigated lie, and there is no evidence anywhere that I've seen that suggests this. And even if he did, well, he certainly wasn't very favorable to their purposes, now was he? So I guess he broke ranks. It's kind of like me renouncing U.S. citizenship. If I had continued to enjoy the benefits of U.S. citizenship, just continued living in Hawaii, and turning a blind eye to the crimes and not speaking out against my nation, I'd say that would make me party to the crime. I chose to reject, renounce, and condemn on every level. I think that's what Adolf did, so I don't know exactly what Lavrov's point is here. It's lost on me, but maybe I'm stupid and he knows more than me. Or maybe I know more than him. Or maybe he's playing a game that doesn't make sense to me. But I do know this, I also hear the Russians using that term Nazi a lot. I don't like that term. It's a derogatory term, it's an insult. And it's no different from the Israelis calling the Palestinians human animals, same basic premise. It's an insult to the reality of who the Palestinians are. National Socialism is something that could liberate all of our nations. In fact, that's what this man Adolf wanted. He was not trying to take over the world. How can the British Empire point a finger at somebody else and say he wanted to take over the world? There's a great map that shows the British Empire, that shows Rome. Even we can look at the Islamic Empire, and then let's look at Germany. How in the hell are you claiming that Germany was trying to take over the world? Especially, talk about pot calling the kettle black. Britain, the sun never sets. Britain, yeah, right. I don't like this term Nazi, and and bearing false witness. Listen, how many times have we believed in our lives? Each one of you can ask yourself this question individually. I know myself, I can look to many points in my life where I genuinely believe something to be true. Most of all, that my nation is the greatest, that for whatever fault we have, you know, we're better than others, right? How many times in our lives have we really believed something to be true and then later found out we were wrong? You know, and if there was a consequence for going against the grain, which is like my life story. When I was speaking out against the crimes of my nation, especially in the aftermath of 9/11, going on CNN and saying that my birth nation was directly involved or complicit with 9/11, how do you think that went over? It didn't go over very well. It wasn't very popular, but I know for a fact it's true, and I was dead right. I don't care about popularity. It means nothing to me. And why would you want to be popular in an insane world? Why? Maybe if you want to be a billionaire, but the bottom line is this: bearing false witness is a crime. Amen. If I'm right about Adolf Hitler, fine, God will judge me. But if everybody else who thinks that stuff is true, when you meet your maker, you may find out, oh my God, oops, I made a big mistake. We'll see how God treats me when I meet him. We'll see. I don't appreciate what the foreign minister said at all. I think it's rubbish. If I ever get to meet you, Sergey, I'll tell you to your face. But good work on a whole bunch of other stuff. I guess that means maybe my visa to Russia's not coming now. Darn it, I just burned another bridge there.
If Jesus, the Isa alayhi Islam, is coming to his ummah, his people, the Christians, and if the Imam al-Mahdi is coming to the Muslims, then why would Nabi Isa alayhi Islam perform the prayer behind the Amim, behind the Mahdi, indicating that he comes as a follower of Islam? So how and why would the Christians have a higher authority than the Muslims at that time? Number one, the Quran prevails over everything. And the Quran declares that a people who follow Jesus, not a people who follow Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon them. A people who follow Jesus, the Messiah, would be raised by Allah to that position of dominance, and when they are raised to that position of dominance, they will remain in that position of dominance until the end of the world. That is the Quran. That's not me, that's the Quran. Good. So anything else must now be understood in such a way that it is not in conflict with the Quran. So our prophet said that when Jesus returns, he will come down from the sky with his hands resting on the wings of 2 angels. But if you are there, you won't see the angels. No. When he comes down, he will come down in a masjid, not a church, not a cathedral, a masjid. And it will be in Damascus. And our Imam would be in that masjid. And I have dealt with this subject, I've written on it in my book entitled The Messiah, the Quran, and the End Time. I think the book is downstairs, so do please do some homework and read the book. The Imam will be in the masjid, and it will be the time of the prayer. And the Israeli army, led by the false Messiah, will be around the masjid, surrounding it. And they are ready for the final kill. When you kill the Imam, everything is now finished. There is no resistance to Israel possible anymore. Like Pharaoh's army approaching the Israelite people who are between the devil and the dark blue sea. And if you destroy them, that's the end of it. The Imam would recognize that this is the Messiah, Jesus, the Son of Mary. If I am there, I may not recognize, but he recognizes. And he does the right thing. He is the Imam or the leader of the community of people who follow Muhammad. Allah's blessing be upon him. But that is a prophet. I am only an Imam. He is a Nabi and he is the Messiah. So the Imam does the right thing when he invites the Messiah to lead the prayer. But this is a masjid, and the prayer will not be conducted in accordance with the law which came down to Moses and to Jesus. Allah's blessing be upon him. We have a different model of scholars, law which came down to Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So our prayer will be conducted differently from the Christian one, but it's the same one God. When the Imam invites him to lead the prayer, since he is a prophet, then in accordance with our Sharia or sacred law, the prophet should lead the prayer. So why does he decline? Why does he say, the people have appointed you as their Imam, you lead the prayer? And he then prays behind the Imam. Answer, you got to learn to think. Don't expect Imran to think for you. You must learn to think. My teacher used to say to me, I'm not going to put you on my back and climb the mountain. I'm going to teach you how to climb the mountain. That's what he used to say. Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. So I have to think, and I understood. If the Messiah had accepted the invitation and he had led the prayer, he would be in conflict with Allah's command to him. Because Allah's command to him is that he is a prophet sent not to all of mankind. No, he is sent to Banu Israel. Twice in the Quran this is mentioned, that the Messiah is sent to the Israelite people. But if he had led the prayer, he would now become the leader of this community which follows Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and he would be in trouble with the Lord God. So that is why he declines to lead the prayer. But when he prays behind the Imam, he sends a message, powerful message, to all Christians and all Jews. What is the message? By praying behind the Imam, in accordance with the law which came down to Muhammad, Allah blessing be upon him, he is telling the world the Quran is absolute truth. The Quran is the word of God. Muhammad is a messenger of God. And every Christian, wherever you are in the world, will now have to accept, if you've not accepted it so far, will now have to accept that the Quran is the word of God and Muhammad is his messenger. But Alhamdulillah, in my old age I'm working, and there are many Christians who are now accepting that the Quran is the word of God, because I don't go with boxing gloves to win any stupid debate. Sorry for this language. I don't go with boxing gloves to win any stupid debate. I do it differently. And there are many Christians now who have a different view of the Quran. And my book, The Quran and Russia's Destiny, I pray will change the views of many Russians. Already you have a president of Russia today who publicly kisses the Quran. Can you imagine Trump doing that? Or Biden? Or this fellow in Britain, I don't know his name, Stammer? Or Macron in France, kissing the Quran? But Putin kisses the Quran. That's right. And so this is the reason why he does not lead the prayer. He prays behind the Imam, because if he were to lead the prayer, he would automatically become the Imam of this Ummah, which would be in violation of Allah's law to him.
Do you think you have or are having influence on other veterans by speaking out about the war crimes? Yes. Yes, I'm being contacted by more and more. And Marines, there's a term for the Marines, Semper Fi, which means always faithful. And if you listen to what I've said over the years, I'm actually grateful for my experience in the Marines, and that may sound crazy, but let me qualify what I mean by that. Number one, I didn't kill anybody, even though I was a machine gunner and I was an infantryman and I was sent into combat. Ironically, Sheikh, you were talking about Kuwait. I have medals for liberating Kuwait. Bit of irony there, since they're not going to be liberated if the prophecy comes true. But the bottom line is that, yeah, I think this is one of the sea changes that we see in the world. The Americans have been willfully and in a special kind of stupid for a long time. But I have a dear brother of mine His name is Marcus. He's 20 years my junior, and he signed up after the so-called War on Terror. He was in Iraq and Afghanistan, but when he was in Afghanistan, he stepped on a landmine and both of his legs were blown off. And I literally asked him, like, if you could go back, brother, would you just kind of step over that way instead of that way? And he literally said to me, and I genuinely, I know he was telling me the truth, he said no. He said no, because it made him the man he is today. And part of that process was realizing the truth. And the truth is that we're mercenaries for the banksters, that the wars we fought, we're cannon fodder. I was a human guinea pig, as was he. We were injected with experimental drugs without informed consent. That's literally human experimentation. And while it's harsh and while it's unpleasant, would he rather do that, you know, like play along like, yeah, I'm a hero, thank you for your service, and just go along with the program, or would he rather be true to himself and what he really knows? And what we know is that we're being used, and this doesn't benefit us, it doesn't benefit humanity, it doesn't benefit America, it doesn't benefit anyone. So yes, there are more and more veterans who are coming into awareness about this, and because of my position as a Marine, yeah, thankfully.
Do you believe that gold will return as the dominating currency post-Malhama and weapons and swords and shields? BRICS has just announced that their currency will be backed by gold. Is it 40%? 40%? 40% backed by gold. That does not mean that you're going to be using dinar and dirham, gold and silver coins. When a currency is backed by gold, this is called the gold standard. And we already had this in the past, before the emergence of the petrodollar monetary system. We used to have a gold standard before the IMF came into being. Gold standard, currencies were backed by gold to a certain extent, but it didn't work out. It didn't work out. And so, while this is a commendable step on the part of BRICS in directing mankind back towards gold, by simply giving this statement that the currency will be backed by gold by 40%. I don't think that this is a step which will eventually culminate with real money returning to the market. No. I have to take our discussion now back to the microanalysis, which is what Ken has been doing, but I have now to enter into the microanalysis. And that is at the same time that BRICS is announcing currency with 40% gold backing. The other side, the Western world, is giving the cashless world of digital money. And when I look at my part of the world, I went to Malaysia, I went to Indonesia last August, July, August, and everywhere I went, I saw sheep and cattle and goats and camels welcoming the cashless world. As though we had no scholars of Islam anywhere. They're either sleeping or eating biryani. And so I asked myself, this is not the Western world. This is the world of Islam. And in the world of Islam, there is such a stupendous success for the cashless world of digital money. And so it looks very much as though that while the monetary system is under attack by BRICS, in the end Israel, after the Great War, will succeed. That there will be a cashless world of digital money that Israel will control. Good? But I want to now take a little time to return to our subject of the master plan that I could not give in my talk. Last November, I normally don't use the term Hamas. I refer to the Islamic resistance. Last November, I declared, I said it, and I was bitterly criticized. I said that Israel set a trap for them. And they were blind and they couldn't see it. And they walked into the trap. Like 9/11, Israel was then able to benefit and profit from a trap which was set for them, and they walked into the trap. That weapons were leaving the United States and the Western world and going to Ukraine. Huge amounts of weapons and drones. And the CIA and the Israeli Mossad were able to siphon off some of those weapons and use Saudi Arabia to get the weapons into Gaza. Putin said the same thing, but he didn't use the term Saudi Arabia. But Putin said that the weapons which were going to Ukraine were being siphoned off. And the Islamic resistance was so innocent, did not know. They believed that these weapons and these drones were coming to them from their people, their supporters, when in fact it was coming from the CIA and the Mossad. And Netanyahu knew everything about it. So the government of Israel, at least the Prime Minister, knew that that attack was coming on the 7th of November. They knew it. And Egypt actually sent a message to them warning them, because Egypt was able to pick up the ground information that the attack was coming. So they knew the attack was coming. And they deliberately allowed the attack to take place. And more than 1,000 Israeli citizens were killed. Why did the government of Israel act in this despicable way? On Judgment Day, we get the evidence that I am speaking the truth. The evidence, the government of Israel wanted Hamas to launch the attack that they did, so that the government of Israel will then be able to profit, to exploit this event to their advantage. What did they have with their master plan? The master plan was, number one, to decimate Hamas, the Islamic resistance, decimate them. Number two, punish the people of Gaza to such an extent that they will eventually turn against Hamas, turn against their own people. Number three, destroy every building in Gaza and drive the people down to the south. And as you drive them down to the south, you destroy all buildings so there is no place to come back. And eventually, when you have them cornered in the south, either throw them into Sinai or force Egypt to accept them. And so you will get rid not only of Hamas, you will get rid of all the Palestinians in Gaza. And Israel will be able to repopulate Gaza with their own people. Number two, not only is Hamas a thorn in the side of Israel, but also Hezbollah in Lebanon. So you must attack the Palestinians to such an extent that you will provoke Hezbollah to join the war. But that did not happen. And Hezbollah was sensible enough, while they will attack Israel, they will not launch a war. So in the event, since Hezbollah was not launching a war, Israel then launched a war on Hezbollah in order to decimate Hezbollah as a threat to Israel. And they have achieved a large measure of success on these two fronts already. Number three, Israel's master plan was also to force Iran into the war, so that Israel could destroy Iran's nuclear plans and either remove the possibility that Iran could ever have nuclear weapons or delay for some indefinite period of time. While Israel has already succeeded and profited immensely in Gaza, while of course turning world opinion against them, but they don't care for world opinion. And Israel has already achieved substantial success in Lebanon. Israel has not achieved that success as yet in Iran. Israel was able to humiliate Iran by assassinating the head of Hamas in Tehran, humiliate Iran by assassinating the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And then Iran responded with a second missile attack on Israel. But Iran does not want war with Israel. And Israel so far has restrained herself from war with Iran. They will attack each other, yes, but a war will result in the collapse of the world oil economy. A war between Israel and Iran will result in the collapse of the world oil economy. Number two, a war between Israel and Iran will immediately result in Iran becoming a nuclear power. And this is what the Western world wants to avoid. And so they have forced Israel to show restraint. But the master plan is the master plan. And Israel is not going to listen to the United States indefinitely. And so eventually it's just a matter of time, I believe. I hope I'm wrong, that Israel will attack Iran to try to destroy Iran's nuclear plans, to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear power, because that is necessary for Pax Judaica to come into being. Yeah.
Have you considered reaching out to George Galloway on his show? Is it the most? Is that it? He is a man who speaks truth and has a big following. What are your thoughts? So, I appreciate the truth. I give credit to anyone who speaks truth, and I also have the ability to give credit to people who speak truth even when they're speaking rubbish as well, and I know it's rubbish. And there are a lot of examples of this. I've already talked about National Socialism, and there's plenty of examples there. One thing I've noticed, and I would be open to being on George's show. I don't take things personally. I read a great book called The Four Agreements. One of the four agreements is take nothing personal. It's actually quite easy for me. While I don't appreciate some of the comparisons to Nazis, blah, 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 I don't like that. I was on George's show. I wish I had a copy of it. I was on his show several years ago, and even I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what it was, but we had a difference of opinion. And I basically, I stand by my position, although I'd really have to think hard. Maybe it was the headbang where I was dead. But the bottom line is we had a disagreement there. I also had experience speaking at an engagement with him a couple of times when I was a hot property. I'm a hot property, then I go down into the gutter, and then I'm a hot property, you know, this is the way it works. And he basically, here's the way I look at it, like he's my elder, right? Like this is my elder here. What I would expect from an elder to be a proper elder is that even though the rambunctious young upstart may have some, you know, really good abilities, but he's wrong here, there, or anywhere, you would encourage that young upstart. You wouldn't be disrespectful to them, unless of course you had a big ego. Now, if the Sheikh had a big ego, he wouldn't want to share the stage with me. But it's not about his ego, it's about something much bigger than the ego. From what I understand, the ego that is George Galloway has been tempered. Also, there's some qualities with regard to womanizing that I believe also have been tempered. And I wish him well, and God bless him. And I'm not casting dispersions, I'm simply saying that I believe this is the reason why we haven't been on more programs together, because for most people it would seem like we would be natural allies, wouldn't we? But that's just not the way it's played out. And when I did disagree with him, again, he didn't act like an elder in my opinion. There's a way to agree to disagree with respect. Or there's a way to just, whatever, act like a child and you know, blah, blah, blah. So, in answer to your question, God bless George Galloway. If he'd like to have me on his show, whatever, water under the bridge, you know, I want a better world. And if we can work together, like make war history, hey George, would you like to come and be a speaker for Maple? Come on over, let's do it. You know, it's not about me, it really isn't. So, I mean, I can certainly move on and do that with him, but there's several others that you would have thought, like, why aren't they natural allies? I can tell you, ego and jealousy has been something I've dealt with my whole life. And if ego and popularity is a little bit too high on your priority list, and those people don't work with me. I love people who, I love men who don't have insecurities. I've got a friend here in the audience who's one of those. And we spent a lot of time together, and we've never had an issue, once. But when a man has insecurity, and he feels like someone else is threatening the shine, like the shine is getting a little bit less off him and over there, yeah, and I can see that stuff a mile away. And whatever, and when God has blessed you as much as God has blessed me, you know, I've been blessed in so many different areas, athletics, speaking, you know, intelligence, I've had a good, it's just what it is, so I've learned to not, it's okay, you know, it's okay. I wish everybody understood the kind of confidence and security that I know. Then the best of them could really come out, we could work together, we could solve this. So if that's possible, I'll happily work with George.
One word, I'm here, inshallah, in Britain, until the end of this month, November, inshallah. If anyone can help in arranging a dialogue with George Galloway, and we can raise the funds, Javed is right here, and we can get a hall, then I'll be happy, of course, because Galloway is a very courageous man, and a man who has shown immense integrity, intellectual integrity, in resisting the oppressor, and therefore we're on the same side of history.
If I may, thank you. I definitely want to echo that, credit where credit is due, where all of these people could have said these things. There's only very few of us that say that, and I mean, really, genuinely, thank you for inspiring me to be more clear. Love and respect to George for saying the things he said. It does take courage, there's a lot of risk involved, and he's done it. God bless him.
You mentioned the wiping of the seed of Ishmael. Does this relate to the Arabs as a whole? Yes. Yes. The Arabs have descended from Ishmael. I don't think the Berber have descended from Ishmael, but the Arabs have. And therefore, the sacrifice of the seed of Ismail alayhi salam, is the destruction of the Arabs.
What will be the different outcomes if Trump or Kamala get elected? Will there be any differences? Effectively, no. Okay, so Kamala Harris has a Jewish husband, first off. She's a prostitute, and I say that in all accuracy, like, literally. You know, she's a political prostitute, but also like a literal. Like, that's how she got there. Plus, she's an idiot. I mean, really, like, she's an idiot. Really. There is a great, when I speak about her, but also Trump is an idiot too. Actually, I saw an interview with a tape recording of Jeffrey Epstein, who again was best mates with Donald Trump. And there's a quote from Donald Trump talking about how I like Jeffrey, he's a great guy. He likes young girls like, you know, like me or something. Like, that's basically him just acknowledging that they like to have intercourse with underage girls. Jeffrey Epstein is absolutely 100% known to have a, quote, modeling agency that was completely rife with girls under the age of 18. This is not even seriously debatable. So you've got effectively a pedophile who's worn his yarmulke and gone and bowed to the Jewish state, who's given Netanyahu the key to the White House, who is bought and paid for by the tribe, who in my mind has committed treason on multiple levels and should be executed, and Kamala Harris, a prostitute who's an idiot, who's got a Jewish husband, and this is the choice. So are we going to find any real difference? I don't understand how anybody thinks. There's a lot of Americans, by the way. I know people in America, I swear I've been trying to warn them for over a decade on this. Like, Iran is not the threat, we are. And I did a video about Trump like 10 years ago. He's bought and paid for. But a lot of people think, they're also saying, they're doling this out. Bill Gates just gave $50 million to Kamala Harris, and they're now selling the story that the reason why is because Bill Gates has been with Epstein. They're also best buddies, so he's also been on the Lolita Express over to that private island to go do you know what with children. So apparently the story is that Gates is paying Kamala to try and get her to win because she won't let the list, the Epstein list with Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, you know, Bill Clinton, and many, many others. This is what Elon Musk is saying this too. Like, they're dreading that Trump gets in there because Trump also said that he would appoint a special prosecutor for Hillary Clinton. And did he do that? No. So they're getting the stupid people to believe that he's going to do something that would not be in the benefit of those who are in charge of him. But again, stupid is as stupid does, so a lot of people are going to buy that. No, there is no real difference. I mean, maybe we might get into World War III a week sooner or later, depending on which one, but that's about it.
I suggest that we put a time to end. Yes, yes, we could take a few more. What role do the Russian forces in southern Syria at the border of the Zionist entity play in the fight against them? I don't have the knowledge of the battlefield. So you need someone who has the capacity to conduct military analysis to be able to answer this question. It's now 5 minutes to 11. Perhaps we can take just a few more questions, and then it's time to go home.
According to Christendom, or I believe that's Christendom, how's the world to be looked at? How's the world to be looked at before Great War? How long it may take to complete this Great War? How long? If it goes the way they intended to go, when the history books are written, likely they'll say that we're already in World War III. And many of the key events have already happened. It depends on what your definition is. But, you know, if we're waiting for the big attack from Iran or Israel to go after the nuke facilities in Iran to be the initiation point of World War III, fine, fair enough. But I think that's really splitting hairs. We're flirting with it for sure. We have been flirting with it for a long time. And again, when you put in the Samson option, can I get how many people know what the Samson option is? Okay, some don't, so let me just explain very briefly. Samson, biblical story, goes back to Samson, a Jew. He was having a hard time with the Philistines, effectively Palestinians, and they were not happy with Samson. Samson basically ran into the temple, pushed over the pillars of the temple. He's sort of the original suicide bomber, effectively. He said, like, okay, I know I'm going to die, but I'm going to bring in as many of you, and then I'm going to kill all of you with me. The Samson option, which has been restated by many top-level Israelis, effectively says that if Israel's going to go down, they're going to take the whole world out with them. And now, courtesy of Germany, which is still paying for Holocaust survivors today, they also gifted Israel with Dolphin-class submarines, which are armed with nukes from Jonathan Pollard, an Israeli spy who stole the technology from America and took it back to the Jewish state. Mordecai Benunu, who I met, exposed all this. Beautiful man. Everybody should know him. Great contribution. Bottom line is this. Israel has the capacity to deliver nuclear weapons from submarines effectively and almost instantly. I mean, these things can be launched and hit their target in such a quick manner that it would take good technology to be able to stop them. But there's every reason to believe that they can actually deliver on their threat to exterminate, if not the whole world, certainly points in Europe and whatnot. They have said this on record. If the media wasn't owned by them, and politicians didn't work for them, and Hollywood wasn't owned by them, then everybody would probably be wise to know that. But most people don't know it, do they? And I've been trying to warn humanity about this. So this is a big question for me. Israel is done, that's my position, prophecy notwithstanding. Israel's done. On a multitude of levels, they're done. So, are they going to launch nukes? For me, that's the question. That's also why I said earlier, I reckon we all get right with God, because if anyone can perform a miracle, He can. He can take their nukes, make them inert, let them fall to the ground, And then the whole world can know that they were trying to exterminate the rest of us Goyim. At which point I think we'll finally all figure it out.
I can't hear you. Yes, we can have a few more. You rightly said that cashless money is a trap, but BRICS is planning to use cryptocurrency as a payment system. They want to use decentralized money. What are your views? Russia is still eating pork. Russia, which is Christian, Orthodox Christian, is still eating pork. But when the Messiah returns, they will learn that pork is haram. So Russia still has to travel some distance to recognize that riba is haram. That using bogus money is haram. How long will it take us to teach Russia that they should return to gold and silver as money, when we cannot even get all our own people in Pakistan, in Iran, in Egypt, anywhere in the world of Islam, to agree and to accept that gold and silver is real money. And that is the money that the Messiah will use when he comes back, and Imam al-Mahdi will use. When we cannot get our people, how can we expect China and Russia to understand that gold and silver are real money?
If I may, please. The one thing that makes, okay, we can all agree that fractional reserve, paper money that has nothing backing it, compounding interest, usury, these things are all wrong. And they're all destructive, and every period in history where that has been prevalent, we've had never-ending wars and destruction, poverty, and so on and so forth. Absolute fact, undeniable. The couple of things that make crypto, at least in an interim, because I don't see crypto as an ideal way. What I do see is a way, they are imploding the economy. We are going into what, if you studied history, Weimar Germany, a wheelbarrow of Deutschmarks. So imagine a wheelbarrow of pounds buying you a loaf of bread, and you're starving. And mothers and daughters are selling themselves for sex to try and not starve. When it gets to that, which is their plan, this is what they're doing. They control the banks, they control the economy, they control the money supply, and they can retract it, and they're doing it. And it's gonna happen, flat out, it's gonna happen. So, I would hope that other forms, I said this earlier, that's in the book, there were tally sticks. We could issue labor certificates, which Germany, labor has value. No one can say labor does not have value. If somebody comes over and mows your lawn, that has value. All you need to do is make sure that they did a legitimate hour of work or whatever, and you pay them a correct amount, that has value, that has real value. I disagree with gold as a form of money because it's a precious metal, and guess who's been buying all the gold? And when we had gold-backed money in the United States, they confiscated all the gold at gunpoint. So, we see that this has happened in the past. I would recommend that we use the same things that are in this book. Don't use precious metals. And if you do, don't issue paper. Carry the actual physical gold. And there's ways to do this in smaller amounts. But the moment you start issuing paper to represent some precious metal, it's historically over and over and over again They're going to put out a whole bunch more paper money that's not equal to the value of the actual metal that you own. The only way to make sure that doesn't happen is to actually have the metal itself, which is why it's better to use non-precious metals that can't be counterfeited. And this is where cryptocurrencies have a real advantage in that you have a decentralization. It's the central banks that are killing us. The decentralization of crypto, by the way, Bitcoin's been corrupted. Bitcoin Cash is not, anyway. When you have decentralization, you can't commit fraud. Because if one node issues a bunch of money, it's not going to jive with all the others. But if you have one central bank, that's why we can't audit the Federal Reserve Bank in America, because they own my country. And you can't audit the bank here. So they can just issue as much funny money as they want to all their little cohorts and all their little minions. And they can also issue the digital stuff, which is definitely the death of us all. Soon it'll be a microchip. David Rockefeller warned us about this in a movie, a film called Freedom and Fascism. Anyway, the point is, in a transition to a better world, I would encourage people to take a good look at the viable alternatives that can eliminate fraud and are not connected to usury. If any such thing exists, I would recommend you look for yourself and be very careful, because if we're stuck with this existing system, it's going to be Weimar Germany here. People are going to starve so badly that people are going to cannibalize each other. I'd much rather be wrong about this, but if you look at history, you're going to see this is what happens.
Any objections? So only one more question? Any objections? No objections. One more. Are you familiar with the Christian eschatological prophecy of 7 years of tribulations, according to which the Jah's actions as public politicians will last 7 years? No, I'm not familiar with it. Sorry. Now then, we asked Javed for permission to have this event tonight for 2 reasons. Number one, we wanted to bring clarity to your minds and to the larger audience outside who will view the video. Clarity to understanding what is happening in Gaza, in the Holy Land. And mashallah, I believe we have done that tonight. Number 2, we do not want your hearts to end up in despair. We want you, having got clarity to this subject, to have hope in your heart. The truth will eventually prevail over falsehood, and justice over injustice and oppression. And I believe we've achieved that tonight. So we want to end by giving thanks to Allah and also to Javed, who so kindly got the owners of this hall to give us the hall free of charge. May Allah bless them all. And thank you. Wassalamu alaikum.
يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي وإلى موائد جود مولاك ارجعي يا نفس إن لم تغفري لا تجزعي وإلى موائد جود مولاك ارجعي وإذا تأخر مطلب فلربما في ذلك التأخير كل المطمع. فاستأنسي بالمنع وارعي حقه